Dresa wakes up in the middle of a forest when she hears a plane arriving. She grabs her weapon, and as soon as a man steps off the plane, she shoots him in the head. Meanwhile, former Marine Levi wakes up from a nightmare and decides to clear his mind by resting at the beach. The next morning, he gets a text telling him to report to the Marine Corps base. There, he meets Agent Bartholomew, who knows all about his career as an elite sniper. She also knows he has no family or friends, which is why she's offering him a job. In Lithuania, Dresa meets her father at a cemetery to mark the anniversary of her mother's death. Her father has just found out his cancer is too advanced to treat. He tells Dresa that if he's still alive by February 14th, he'll end his own life to reunite with his wife on Valentine's Day. Months later, in September, Levi wakes up groggy on a plane, having been put under anesthesia. He asks a soldier where they're headed, but she says she's not allowed to tell him. She takes all his personal belongings and tells him they're approaching a no-fly zone. He has to jump and continue on foot. Levi grabs his assigned gear, jumps, and waits for the right moment to open his parachute. He lands safely and begins a long, grueling journey through rough terrain, climbing, trekking, and camping along the way. Eventually, he reaches the edge of a massive gorge, where he meets a soldier named JD, who has been stationed there for a year but still doesn't know exactly where they are. JD takes Levi to the West Tower, a self-sufficient outpost powered by solar energy, with a backup generator, a rainwater system, a vegetable garden, and plenty of wild game to hunt. Across the gorge is the East Tower, but communication with its guard is strictly forbidden. The gorge is lined with landmines and tactical barriers to the north and south, making it impossible to cross. As JD continues showing Levi around, he explains his new job. Every day, Levi must patrol the western rim and restock the ammo in the automatic gun turrets stationed every 600 meters. Levi's job isn't just about refilling ammo, he also has to check the containment fence, suspended mines, and cloakers. The cloakers are special devices that send false signals to satellites, keeping the gorge hidden from the world. Every 30 days, there's a radio check-in, but there's no way to actually communicate with anyone outside. If something goes wrong, there's a panic button that activates something called the stray dog protocol, but JD has no idea what it does. His only advice: if it ever happens, run. JD explains that this place has existed since the Cold War. Back then, different nations agreed to keep it a secret, meaning even world leaders don't know about it. Levi's mission is simple: make sure nothing from the gorge gets out. It sounds ridiculous, and JD used to think so too until he saw something. The guards call them hollow men, which can now be heard screaming in gorge. He tells Levi that in the late 1940s, 3 battalions on horseback were sent into the gorge to wipe out whatever was in there, but none of them ever came back. Since then, the military has focused on containment instead of trying to fight whatever's inside. After this conversation, JD leaves the tower and hikes to the pickup point. A helicopter arrives, and a soldier lowers a rope to lift him up. Once JD is aboard, the soldier asks for his identity. When JD gives the correct password, the soldier shoots him in the head and drops his body into the mountains. A month later, Levi has settled into the boring routine. He walks the perimeter, checks the security systems, and does the monthly radio check. The voice on the other end just asks if everything is fine, then hangs up before Levi can ask any questions. One day, while tending the garden, Levi notices movement at the other tower. He grabs his binoculars and sees a woman chopping wood. Dresa. She sees him too but doesn't acknowledge him. One stormy night, Levi wakes up from a nightmare. Startled, he accidentally knocks over a glass, which shatters. Half asleep and on edge, he grabs his gun, thinking he's under attack. But when he feels a sharp pain in his foot, he realizes he just stepped on the broken glass. As he cleans his wound, he notices Dresa is still awake, watching him from across the gorge. But when she realizes he's looking back, she goes to bed. Another month passes, and Dresa is stuck celebrating her birthday alone. Bored and restless, she fires her gun to get Levi's attention. Then she holds up a sign asking for his name. Levi writes back, reminding her they aren't supposed to talk. Dresa doesn't care. She writes her name and adds that she'll do whatever she wants on her birthday. Amused, Levi gives in and writes his name too, then raises a glass for a silent toast. Dresa cranks up some loud music and starts dancing. She gestures for Levi to join in, but he shakes his head, writing that he's a terrible dancer but an excellent sniper. In response, Dresa smirks and shoots his water bottle. Without missing a beat, Levi grabs his gun and shoots hers too. Laughing, Dresa takes another bottle and balances it on her head, inviting him to continue the game. Dresa suddenly stops everything when she notices movement in the gorge. Levi looks down and sees strange creatures, twisted, tree-like humanoids climbing up his side of the gorge wall. Without hesitation, he shoots one, sending it tumbling onto a landmine. The explosion takes out most of the climbers, but a few keep coming. Levi keeps firing, and Dresa joins in with her machine gun. Within minutes, they take down all the creatures. Just as they think it's over, one of the monsters reaches Dresa's balcony. She quickly shoots it several times before kicking it off. But now, more of them start climbing her side of the gorge. Once again, she and Levi work together, unleashing gunfire and setting off more mines. Another explosion sends a piece of shrapnel flying, hitting Dresa in the shoulder. Things get worse when the creatures start climbing both sides at once. Levi and Dresa use their machine guns and detonate more mines as backup, finally wiping out the monsters until no more appear. The next morning, Dresa patches up her wound and jokes that this was the best birthday she's ever had. Levi spends the day repairing the damage and replacing the mines. While he's working, a drone suddenly flies up from the gorge and disappears into the sky. By December, they've grown more comfortable with each other. To bring some holiday spirit, Levi decorates a tree in the forest with lights and leaves a sign for Dresa. From then on, they start doing small activities together, building snowmen with each other's names, playing chess, and even drumming on pots for fun. On February 14th, Levi sees Dresa crying in front of a family picture. She skipped her usual patrol, and when he asks why, she admits she's having a tough day. She quietly says she wishes he could be there with her. Moved, Levi gathers materials from the armory and builds a special contraption. He fires a rocket across the gorge, which gets stuck in a tree, accidentally starting a small fire. Dresa runs to put it out and notices a rope attached to the rocket. She secures it tightly to the tree before rushing back to her tower, where she sees Levi standing there, inviting her to dinner. Levi slides down the rope to cross the gorge but gets stuck midway. Wearing gloves, he grips the rope and carefully inches his way forward. When he finally reaches Dresa's tower, he gives her flowers. She laughs and tells him he stinks from all the effort, so Levi agrees to take a shower. While he's washing, Dresa swaps his uniform for clean clothes left behind by a previous occupant. During dinner, they talk about their past lives as mercenaries and how this kind of work messes with their minds. Later, they share a slow dance, which eventually leads to something more. The next morning, Levi prepares to return to his tower, sliding back across the rope. But just as he's halfway, the hollow men reappear on his side of the gorge and trigger a landmine. The explosion snaps the rope, sending Levi plummeting. He barely manages to deploy his parachute. Seeing this, Dresa rushes to her armory, grabs more weapons and a parachute, and jumps after him. After several miles of freefall, Dresa lands in a river. Her parachute gets caught on a rock, and she has to cut herself free. The current is strong, and when she slams into a rock, she accidentally drops her auto-ascender, her best way of climbing back up. She fights against the current, grabbing onto tree roots to pull herself to shore. Meanwhile, Levi is unconscious, hanging from a tree by his parachute. Suddenly, one of the branches moves. It's not a branch at all, but a monster. As it reaches for him, Levi wakes up and immediately starts shooting while struggling to free himself. He finally untangles the ropes and falls, but instead of landing on solid ground, he sinks into what looks like mud. But then the mud starts moving. It isn't mud at all, it's the mouth of another monster. The strange substance traps Levi as the monster's mouth slowly starts to close around him. Just in time, Dresa hears the gunshots and rushes over, opening fire to free him. Once he's out, she uses a knife to scrape off the sticky residue from his body. With no time to waste, they start heading toward the wall, hoping to find the rope. Before they get far, a loud screech echoes through the gorge. Two hollow men appear riding monstrous, tree-like horses. They charge at Levi and Dresa, attacking with swords. One of them jumps off his horse, tackling Dresa. She fights back, stabbing it in the neck before shooting it in the face. Meanwhile, the other rider uses a whip to snatch Levi's rifle away. Levi quickly pulls out his handgun and shoots both the rider and the horse, taking them down in seconds. After the fight, Dresa checks her bag and realizes the auto-ascender is gone. It must have fallen into the river. The walls are too high to climb, which means they're stuck. Thinking fast, Dresa suggests following the river since it has to drain somewhere. While examining the body of one of the hollow men, Levi notices it's wearing an old military uniform. That's when it hits him the hollow men are actually the Lost Horseback battalions from the story. As they move deeper into the forest, they come across hundreds of skeletons. Eventually, they find an abandoned town, its buildings covered in twisted, mutated plants. Signs of an old earthquake are visible in the cracked ground. Suddenly, eerie screeches echo in the distance. More creatures are coming. They quickly hide inside a church. Inside, they find rows of skeletons sitting in the pews. Levi catches a familiar scent: cyanide. These people must have taken their own lives, choosing death over whatever horror lurks in this place. Then, a sudden noise makes Dresa look up. A massive spider leaps from the ceiling, aiming right for her. She barely manages to push it away but falls to the ground, where another spider is already closing in. She stabs it just as two more jump at Levi. He reacts fast, shooting them before they can get too close. But then, even more spiders start swarming. Levi and Dresa fire non-stop, trying to hold them back. Dresa runs out of bullets, so Levi covers her while she reloads. Before they can make it to the door, hollow men burst into the church. Now, they're fighting on two front: spiders on one side, hollow men on the other. Dresa grabs a creature and repeatedly slams its head onto a table before throwing it toward the spiders, who immediately start crawling over it. Levi, struggling with a few hollow men of his own, manages to fight them off and shoot them down. Thinking fast, Dresa fires a grenade at the back wall, blowing open an escape route. The two soldiers sprint into the forest, but the screeches behind them don't stop. They need cover. Moving quickly, they get closer to the gorge wall, where they find an old door hidden among the overgrown plants. They rush inside and discover a long-abandoned facility, now completely overtaken by nature. As they explore deeper, they realize what this place really was: a military lab. Dresa finds a generator and turns it on, lighting up the room. Levi spots an old film reel and plays it on a projector. The footage shows a scientist from 1946 explaining that this place was built as part of a secret project between several nations. During the final years of World War II, they developed biochemical missiles here. But 6 days before the recording, an earthquake hit the area, causing a chemical leak. The scientists worked non-stop to contain it, but the toxin mixed with the local plants and animals, mutating them. The scientist in the video lifts her shirt, revealing twisted branches growing from her stomach, proof that the toxin was slowly affecting humans too. Thankfully, because the base was inside the gorge, the toxin never spread beyond this area. In another room, Levi and Dresa find a computer from the late 2000s. This means people kept coming back to continue the experiments long after the original accident. Levi turns on the computer and finds out this facility belongs to Dark Lake, a private paramilitary corporation. The drone they saw earlier was collecting samples for Dark Lake, which is trying to create super soldiers. The towers and hired guards, including Levi and Dresa, are just there to keep the secret safe. As Levi digs deeper, he finds files on something called the Stray Dog Protocol, a nuclear bomb designed to destroy the entire area if another leak happens. As they leave the facility, Levi tells Dresa that despite everything, this mission was worth it because it led him to her. They step outside, throwing a smoke grenade for cover. Suddenly, a hollow man's whip snaps around Dresa's ankle, yanking her off her feet and dragging her away through the forest. She tries cutting the whip with her knife, but she crashes into a tree and drops it. She pulls out her gun, but the rough terrain makes it impossible to aim. Levi follows the tracks and finds the facility housing the nuclear bomb. Inside, the hollow man has strung Dresa up and is torturing her, twisting the branch growing from her stomach before ripping it out. Dresa grits her teeth through the pain, then kicks him in the chest and untangles the ropes to free herself. Grabbing a sharp piece of metal, she fights back. The hollow man is too strong, slamming her around the room while the snake in his chest strikes at her. Dresa refuses to give up. She manages to slice off the snake's head and then hurls the metal shard at the hollow man. It barely slows him down, it just makes him angrier. The hollow man grabs his sword and charges at her. Dresa dodges, grabbing bones from the ground to use as a makeshift shield. She spots a bonfire nearby and quickly makes a torch, swinging it at him. The flames catch on his body and he screams in pain. That's when Levi arrives, gun ready. He doesn't hesitate, he shoots the hollow man dead. Dresa and Levi hug, relieved to be alive. As Levi inspects the hollow man's uniform, he recognizes the name. It was the first guard assigned to his tower. Taking the creature's sword, they press on. Eventually, they reach the site of the original chemical leak. Mutated creatures are frozen in the goo, their distorted faces still breathing. As they cross a bridge, Dresa accidentally steps on a root, disturbing the sticky substance. The bodies in the goo suddenly come to life, reaching for her. Levi reacts fast, slashing the roots with his new sword, freeing her just in time. But now the bigger creatures start waking up, roaring in fury. Levi fights through them with the sword, cutting a path forward. Suddenly, a goo-covered whip lashes around his ankle, yanking him down. Thinking fast, Dresa fires a grenade behind them. The explosion ignites the goo, setting the entire area on fire. As the flames spread, she helps Levi up, and they sprint toward a staircase leading out of the nightmare. Levi and Dresa search the abandoned town and find a garage full of old military jeeps. They fix up an engine and drive off, heading toward the broken rope they saw earlier. After hours of driving, they finally reach it. Levi quickly ties the rope to the jeep while Dresa shoots at the hollow men trying to attack them. When she runs out of bullets, they switch places. Once the jeep is secured, they begin ascending the wall. At first, everything goes smoothly until they realize the hollow men are climbing after them. They kick one off, but more keep coming. Levi uses his sword to fight them off, while Dresa grabs an axe from the toolbox to do the same. One creature lands on the windshield, and Dresa has to smash it off. Another hollow man leaps onto Levi, nearly throwing him off the jeep. He manages to grab onto the edge at the last second, but now he's hanging in midair. Thinking fast, Levi stabs the jeep's gas tank before climbing back inside. He pulls out a flare, lights it, and throws it at the creatures. The gas catches fire, causing a massive explosion that burns all their enemies, but it also destroys the jeep. The blast throws Levi against the wall, breaking his leg. Dresa helps him up, and since they're closer to the top now, they cut the rope, sending the jeep crashing down on the remaining hollow men. They climb the rest of the way and return to Dresa's tower. While tending to their wounds, they agree to stay apart for 5 days to make sure they're not infected. But they also plan to destroy the gorge and escape together. Before parting, they share a kiss, and Levi tells Dresa he loves her. Then he uses a grappling gun to swing back to his own tower. The next day, during the radio check-in, Levi's call is picked up by Bartholomew, one of the higher-ups. She knows someone turned on the lab computer and questions him about it. Levi denies going into the gorge, so Bartholomew assumes it was the soldier in the other tower, Dresa. She orders Levi to kill her. He pretends to accept the mission, but as soon as the call ends, it's revealed that the lab computer had a camera. Bartholomew already knows both of them were there. She contacts a commander to send a team into the gorge. The next morning, while preparing mines for their plan, Dresa leaves Levi a message, "I love you back." But before they can say anything else, a helicopter appears. They immediately run into the forest as enemy soldiers land at the towers and send drones after them. A chase begins, with the drones opening fire. Levi and Dresa shoot back, taking them down one by one, but both get injured in the process. Reaching higher ground, they set up sniper positions and take out the cloakers' elite guards using stealth technology. The mines they placed earlier create a chain reaction, wiping out the entire cloaker unit. With the gorge now fully exposed, the stray dog protocol activates. The nuclear bomb is about to detonate. Realizing what's happening, Bartholomew and her team rush to escape in a helicopter, while Levi and Dresa run for their lives. The bomb goes off, causing a massive explosion. The shockwave hits the helicopter, sending it crashing to the ground and killing everyone inside. Unfortunately, Levi is also caught in the blast. He's thrown off the edge of a cliff and falls into a river. Dresa barely escapes and hides in a cave, waiting for Levi. But after a month with no sign of him, she loses hope and decides to leave on her own. Sometime later, in France, Dresa is working as a waitress. One day, she turns around and is shocked to see Levi sitting at a table, alive. He explains it took him a while to recover from his injuries. Without hesitation, they reunite with a kiss.